let's talk about working with fields. Fields are our instance variables, and what that means is these are going to allow us to change state within our class. State can be anything from a value that's getting turned from false to true, an integer, for example. You can also change your strings, whatever you want. Changing your types to something else is going to change the state. The class itself is now defined as something else. If you have a shirt and you spill red ink on it, well, now that state has changed. So similarly, it works in the same way with your class. So normally when you come through and you create your variables here, these are going to be for the class. Normally you would use them as private, and that is what you're defaulting to when you don't specify public or private. We'll talk about access members later. Public variables are going to be visible to all. So if we went down into our class, we're looking at the class members project in the classes folder. If we went down within the body of our main class here, you'll see that we actually specify a different value for our first class object here, c1.I. You'll also note that if you specify c1, you'll get a list of the members that you can use, and you'll also see here the properties or the fields that are going to be public as well. So anything public you're going to see here. And you can see yours are defined by this little teal colored access point here. So I and sprintID are going to be the fields that we can access. These are public fields. And you can see that these two here are our public methods, print number and print string, that we can access. We get access via the same way that we can actually set things like this, for example. Alright, so fields are great. Fields are how we access our data. Now you know that we have a lot of fields here. You can initialize the variables here as you want to. Specify public or private or whatever here, right before the type that you're using. And then you can also work within constructors. Like I said, constructors are actually going to allow you to create the class, and there can be many different types of constructors. Take a look at the overloading constructor video for more information on that. The constructor is how we're going to set up our actual class whenever somebody instantiates it, when somebody sets it up to use it. Like you see here, we're creating an instance of our class. This means to instantiate our class. So you can also see we're passing some information in here with our new, the class, and then we're passing in a string. Well, this is going to actually come up here, and it's going to say, okay, what constructor has a string as a parameter? Well, it's going to take that one, because you can see we have different ones, and we'll talk about that later. And that's how you can do it. You can set up your variables. You can do it with this default constructor, which has no variables here, nothing passed. This is a default constructor, and this is normally what you would use with your constructor. It's the default constructor, like I said, we'll talk about that, but we're actually only going to set up this b has printed once to false. That's where we initialize the variable. We could have done it here, like we have with I equals 100, but we didn't. You could do that. It's up to you. Now, here's something else, a read-only field. So a read-only field, if you want it to be read-only, it's going to live in between public and string. That's the keyword. Public and the type, or private and the type, whatever our access method is. This is it, one word, read-only. And basically what you're going to be doing here is establishing a read-only field. Well, somebody might be saying, well, wait a second, a constant is a read-only field. So why do we need read-only? Well, a constant is going to do things differently. A constant is going to be specified at compile time, but a read-only field allows you to specify it at runtime. And what I mean by that is that you can actually initialize this variable via a constructor. And when you do that, you can initialize it here as well, and within the default constructor. Once you initialize it, it's set. It can't be changed. Read-only. Set once, read-only. But you can do it from a constructor. Here's a custom constructor. And you can see we're passing an SPID, which is going to change that printer ID. And that is the printer ID for this printer, which is a read-only field. Well, when we come down here all the way towards the bottom, not to confuse anybody, but read-only fields are really cool. I like them. You can actually create your second class here, cprinter C2, for the name of the variable, new cprinter, passing in a string, which is going to be the printer ID, which you're setting, the user's setting, whoever's writing this second class is setting, and we also pass in a variable as well. But this sprinter ID is going to get set once, a read-only field. Fields are fantastic. You're going to use this quite a lot, different ways of working with your fields, but this is really how you do it. You set things up, and because we're working with classes always, you're always going to be setting up your variables within your classes in the body of some class or structure or other type that can have or hold members. So you just need to get used to it, but not difficult to actually get started. Use them as you need to.